You all right?
Had a nightmare.
About?
Take forever to explain.
Dawn's some way off. We've got time.
What can be said that hasn't been said about The Witcher 3? It's won over 800 awards, ranging from the Game of the Year in 2015 and 2016, Best RPG of 2015, Best Visual Design and Gaming Moment from the 33rd Golden Joystick Awards, and winning the Outstanding Achievement in Game Design. The list goes on and on. This game has been more decorated with awards than your Christmas tree on Christmas Eve. There are more articles written about its success, narrative, voice acting, and character design than you can shake a stick at. And by April 2021, it has sold over 30 million copies, while the series as a whole has sold over 50 million copies, according to CD Projekt Red's Twitter account. It received numerous Game of the Year awards and has been cited as one of the best video games ever made. 2 expansions were also released to critical acclaim, Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine. The Game of the Year edition was released in August 2016 with the base game, the expansions, and all of the DLC. And now that 6 years have passed, the buzz has moved on to some newer game, yet it is still striking to see that The Witcher 3 is placing highly in the SteamCharts.com, with it being a most played game at number 56 at a concurrent 18 to 20,000 players each month. Hey, I'm your host AC88, and I'll be reviewing Witcher 3. Enjoy. I have finally beaten the main campaign at about 90 hours of gameplay. That for me was nearly a year of playing. I enjoyed advancing the plot a little bit each month, about 45 minutes at a time on my Twitch streams. I savored the delectable story, enjoyed the perfectly situated music, absorbing the lore, the mystery, and the fantastical, which all culminated in me believing that I was living in this European fantasy world. The character design, emotional, and moral tensions, the consequences of my choices always had me role-playing what I felt would be best for our hero, Geralt. But the game was so big that in order for me to save time when I was streaming, I would only do the main missions, and all the side content and extra missions I would do off-stream. Otherwise, I would never finish the game. The scale of RPGs has in my lifetime left me avoiding them for the sake of my own time management. When I was in high school, I would be hyped for a new RPG that promised over 100 hours of content. Games like Golden Sun 1 and 2 were some of my favorites.
Surround yourself with the magical world of Golden Sun for your Game Boy Advance. Play multiplayer or solo as Isaac and his 3 adepts master the power of synergy, travel immense continents, challenging diabolical foes to deadly duels of destruction.
Between the turn-based combat, incredible music, and amazing summons, I knew that RPGs were the kings of amazing stories and interesting combat, whether turn-based or action. And furthermore, I knew that I would be really getting my money's worth as far as I could be concerned. A game that claimed to be 50 hours long would mean $1 an hour. But nowadays, I don't have the time for a full 7-course meal of gaming. I'd much prefer a 30, 45-minute competitive session or a level-based game where my progression can be easily tracked. That is why I was so worried about starting The Witcher 3. I just wasn't prepared. It really doesn't feel like there is much padding at all as you begin to learn more about its world, its sense of humor, and the heroic calling that it places on you. The nearest RPG that I think about for comparison's sake would be The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim. Back when that one was released, I really enjoyed playing through its beautiful landscapes, its foggy mountains, as I became the Dragonborn. In Skyrim, your story and your character are exactly as you make them, as your actions are considered and your skills advance with each use. I really enjoyed that model of emergent gameplay and experience. It felt natural that if you wanted to be a silent rogue like me, then you would go get your sneaking on, shoot a bow and arrow, and stab in the back. All things I love to do in Skyrim, and I was rewarded in that playstyle. Inherently though, the story is written so broadly that no matter how you play, you will receive about the same story based on your decisions. The Witcher though takes a different route with its storytelling, its character development, and its player experience. Instead of a blank slate tabula rasa that Skyrim offers you, The Witcher 3 provides you with a character, Geralt, and he has an established history from the previous 2 games, and therefore relationships that he has to maintain and develop. That might make you think that it would be harder to understand what is going on in the narrative as you're entering into the 3rd act, but I suppose that this is a phenomenon true of all of life, and I felt right at home, learning as I went and taking each strange creature and magical element at face value. And therefore, I don't think you need to play the previous games to understand what's happening in the 3rd. The story picks up without any new issues for new players. And notably, Witcher 3 lets you import your save file from Witcher 2, so you can continue the game with the decisions that you made in the previous game, and that is awesome. Learning about the culture of the Witcher in their castle at Kaer Morhen and the Emperor Emir of the Nilfgaard people, Radovid in the north, and the Viking analogues in the island of Skellige, and Vizima, the marshland villages with sporadic poor serfs, made me really appreciate the lived-in and genuine believability that the world presents. Each area has its own seal of arms and color schemes that bleeds credibility and Renaissance flair, with the economics of each area appearing in the cleanliness of the clothes, hairstyles, and weaponry, down to the plant life and weather patterns. The game is absolutely stunning, and it oozes atmosphere with every moment of your experience. I can't speak highly enough of the idle chatter and the ambient noise that sells the experience of a bustling city like Novigrad, or the docks of a fishing town in Skellige.
A rolling gale!
Each area, whether it is in a valley, a cave, a castle, or seafaring, all combined create a mostly seamless experience. But what is most believable isn't just the landscape, the weather, and the denizens of each city. The political structures and powers that be are also very well established and well written. Between monarchies, the Free State of Novigrad, and even a Nilfgaardian empire, there are plenty of traditional examples of medieval polity. They all contain backstabbing, power grabbing, and doublespeak that you would expect. But also, you'll see examples of heroic and respectable leadership. There are, of course, plenty of underground mafia lords, local tyrants, and obscure druidic healers mixing their faith with magic to add to the complete obscurity to some of the characters that you will interact with. The music must be mentioned also for its solemn, tender, and forlorn tone. Especially in the genre of RPGs, music plays a critical role in setting the tone for the overworld, the combat, the introspective moments, and the heroic resolves. There were plenty of times when I would be riding Roach, Geralt's horse, sauntering through the grassy fields of Vizima, passing up and down the hills, and watching as the sun was setting, with the wind pushing on the trees, and the music swelled, and placed me in a state of catatonic bliss. I might have fallen asleep once or twice, as its soothing soundtrack made my weary bones relax after a long day. So, yes, the soundtrack to The Witcher 3 is superb, and without a doubt, adds to the experience. I particularly love and collect excellent original soundtracks for games, and this one is easily added to my playlist. You'll encounter plenty of well-written characters when you're playing Witcher 3. There are 2 major female characters that you even get to romance. The beautiful but cold and direct Yennefer.
Mind if I take the helm?
I got a choice.
No.
You smell wonderful.
Geralt, we're at a funeral.
You smell wonderful at this funeral.
And the red-headed and more down-to-earth and impulsive Triss Marigold.
It's been so long since I've been to a feast, ball, or reception. An amazingly pleasant change from the sewers of Novigrad.
So, does this mean it's a good time to ask you about
Yes?
that mage we met earlier?
They will both get major time with Geralt, and depending on your decisions along the way, they will have some impact on how the story will conclude. They are integral to the story, and not just there for eye candy. They each have defined characteristics that make them attractive, powerful, and entertaining to do missions with. In fact, many people on their second playthrough will choose to romance the opposite girl that they did the first time. That way they can see all the cool events in their New Game Plus mode. And that's right, the game does offer New Game Plus. So while trying to decide between which girl you're going to court, there are probably other minor endeavors of romance that I am not aware of, as it seems that the game is so thick with options that I can't tell you the truth. I know that there is a brothel in Novigrad, but I avoided that altogether. For what it's worth, I've always felt that Geralt and Yennefer were the power couple that was to be. So in my playthrough, I took every effort to embrace her. One thing I want to add here is that during my playthrough of The Witcher 1, the game also had romance options, but they came off as more tasteless, scripted, and just horny. They were written for the hormone-laden preteens, and just totally unrealistic. But in the third iteration of The Witcher, each encounter felt far more real, slow-paced, and natural. So, yes, there is nudity and sexual themes throughout the game, but more often than not, they appear as one would expect in a real Renaissance era, and life generally. For the parents of young children and those that want to protect themselves from lusting, 2 key areas will have nudity that can't really be avoided. The underground baths of Novigrad with Geralt and Dijkstra, and the flashback scene with Ciri at a bathhouse. Each section is about 15 minutes long, but other than that, nudity is not really an issue you'll have to worry about. I don't recall sex scenes or excessive nudity, though some might exist as you are exploring the world, so watch out. Besides the romantic interests that the sorceresses add to the narrative, there are the rest of the supporting cast, between Dandelion the Bard, the Witchers Lambert and Vizimir, Letho and Gaetan, also Eskel, along with the dwarf Zoltan Chivi, and many, many, many more. There are so many unique and interesting characters that it would be a waste of time to list all of them. Not that they aren't interesting, but it would be like spoiling a party by naming all the people that are coming. Suffice to say that each NPC you encounter will have their own motivations, personality, and drives that make them likable, even if they are an antagonist, like the members of the Wild Hunt. and the antagonists really do grab your attention just as much, if not more, than some of Geralt's friends. Each group of people have their own racial tensions amongst the largely human populace in the game. And these racial tensions aren't lost on the player, as you usually are caught up right in the middle of deciding the fate of an elf, dwarf, or a human, or some magical or cursed creature like a werewolf.
No! Stop! Don't harm him!
You insane? Stand back, he's dangerous.
Not to me, he's not.
Thus, deciding the fate of many ends up being the Witcher's job, since the law typically only extends to the limits of the castle walls. And I think that CD Projekt Red, in this regard, was faithful to the source material. I'm not sure I enjoy dwelling on these issues for too long, but it is nice to see that there is an understandable, albeit surface-level, commentary on the racial fantasy. I want to take some of this into my future D&D campaigns as well. It seems so much more real when not everyone is easily accepting towards the cat-eyed witcher with freakish strength, speed, and skill with a blade. Nor should everyone be happy that a dwarf is mucking around in human affairs. Similar to The Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship brought together all sorts of ragtag sorts from hobbits, dwarves, elves, humans, and other fantastical monsters to accomplish a goal. And they didn't get along either.
And if we fail, what then? What happens when Sauron takes back what is his? I will be dead before I see the ring in the hands of an elf.
Army would fail.
Elves have tried to join with dwarves against Sauron, but the dwarves prefer to hide in their dark caves counting their treasures.
At least dwarves are not fleeing Middle-earth, but elves are sailing away to the safety of the West during our darkest hour. Enough.
So, likewise, despite their inherent distrust between Geralt and his posse, The Witcher 3 respects the fact that tension exists and it will play on it. What brings the whole game together, really, is the story. It's chock full of main quests that will take a long time to complete, but it also has plenty of side quest material, side quests that rival the narrative structure and writing of the main quests. You'll also see Witcher contracts, maps for treasure hunting, and so many other happen-upon events that it's very hard to stay on the main beaten path. There are the countless story bits and conversations brewing all around you to the point that it will quickly become overwhelming. What I will recommend is that you spend time working through not just the main quests, but some of the side quests, and the Witcher contracts, and the treasure hunting when you're in a particular area. It's better just to decide to tackle a few of these all in Novigrad at the same time than separating them until after you've beaten the game. Further, you'll be getting excellent gear for your level and encountering plenty of unique voices, monsters, and items, so don't skimp out. I also must mention the stellar Gwent card game that nearly every blacksmith, armorer, herbalist, and tavern keep, and many of the major characters will play with. Admittedly, this is not the easiest card game to get into, but with some time and pushing through, you'll begin to see the depth and strategy that the game holds. Admittedly, I didn't play much of Gwent in The Witcher 3, because Gwent has taken on a life of its own in the standalone mobile and PC client, with better art, cards, and hero powers and updates that Witcher 3 doesn't have. A few years back, I made a review of 5 different mobile card games on my YouTube channel, and after much thought, I actually placed Gwent as my favorite amongst them. Though now, I think that Legends of Runeterra might be my favorite card game for its complexity, ease of access to new cards, and its ability to mirror Magic and Hearthstone in an interesting way. I still think that Gwent is the perfect card game for any veteran of the genre. It plays so much differently by comparison to the traditional 20 life value destroying themes of the big hitters like Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! Instead of reducing your opponent's health to 0, Gwent focuses on winning a best 2 out of 3 by point value. Therefore, counting cards and your opponent's cards really matters, along with valuing your points and protecting them from the value degradation or destruction from your opponent provides a total new angle on how to play cards. Even card placement and location matters in Gwent, which is atypical of most card games. Interestingly, many of the cards are NPC characters that you encounter or monsters that you happen upon in the story. This was a bit of an issue as there are plenty of obscure names and they do powerful things, but without the time spent reading or memorizing who they were and what they did, it can be a bit overwhelming for new players. So with that said, I definitely recommend looking up a guide if you want to play Gwent in The Witcher 3. The game also has fist fights and horse racing competitions. Personally, I didn't get much out of the fist fighting. I thought that it was just a bit unbalanced, either too easy or too hard. I never really found a middle ground with them. The horse racing was way more fun, but the issue is just that navigating with Roach can become a problem. Overall, together these three, Gwent, the fist fights, and horse racing, they do provide some interesting side content. But given that Gwent is its own standalone product today, I honestly see little reason to play it in The Witcher 3, if I'm perfectly honest. But I'd much rather you just download the game on your phone or through Steam or GOG and play it with real people, as it is really an excellent side content that will entertain you without question. With all that being said though, the main storyline is superb, and the quest for Ciri spans nearly 50 hours of strictly main story missions before you find her. I particularly loved the places that you go and the characters that you meet all along the way. And notably, when Ciri is the focus, she sometimes becomes playable in the flashback sequences. Her blinking ability and ninja attacks are just amazing. She is an engaging co-protagonist that Geralt provides a father figure to, and their relationship is really genuine.
Wrong. Now I see why you were so eager to practice. Strike! You're not in this circus. Pirouette. Wrong. Footwork. Enough. Get down.
With a flip?
What do you think? All right. Take off the blindfold. You've got work to do. Your reflexes are still slow.
Maybe for a witcher.
Think drowners or striggers will go easy on you because you haven't undergone the...
I really enjoyed the scenes in which they got to interact together. They were some of my genuinely favorite parts of the game. For all the praise I can afford the game, there are a few pain points that I should mention. The difficulty can spike at times. Your horse gets caught on all sorts of small inclines and shrubs, which breaks the flow of travel more than would be preferable. The item management, leveling, and crafting is all rather uninteresting to me, though for the seriously dedicated, I'm sure that it has its fans. If I could get through the game without ever switching swords or armor or worrying about potion optimizations, I would have preferred it. The swimming feels a bit wonky, with the ascension from the deep feeling a tad slower than I wish it had, and I also saw some clipping and weird walking behaviors. What are you guys doing? That's ridiculous. You guys act like humans, please. Also, this really isn't a gripe, but the fighting in The Witcher 3 is sometimes interesting and sometimes not. Between the dodging, the rolls, and the parries, it can get pretty predictable. Sometimes the animations for the sword swinging can feel tedious and stilted. When you're locked into an animation and you're prancing around on the battlefield, but you're completely not attacking the people or the monsters that you want to attack, it can be kind of silly. Lastly, the crossbow in particular was absolutely useless outside of grounding creatures in the air. Maybe I was missing something, but I barely used the crossbow throughout the entire game. But all these gripes seem very minor in the grand scheme of things. The Witcher is still worth playing and purchasing at full price today. It still has a compelling story to tell, and I know that without a doubt, I'll be playing through the DLC and revisiting the main campaign in a couple years. I will truly miss the world and the music of The Witcher. I'll miss the characters and the setting, the villains and the heroes. Geralt as a protagonist is interesting. He's smart, funny, and he has wits. The Witcher 3 tells a story that most games don't have time to develop. It demands more from you than mindless button pressing, especially at the higher difficulties, and it asks for moral dilemmas to be solved. It asks for your time, investigative thoughts, and critical thinking. And it does this by getting its hook in early with the Bloody Baron story and keeps pressing you on. Each story serves the larger meta story that culminates in a unique ending all to yourself based upon the decisions that you made during your gameplay. And there are even 3 multiple endings with 30 variations on those based upon your decisions as you play the game. This fact alone makes the replayability of the main story so much more worth your time. Each story and each line of dialogue can spin you out into further questing and unpredictable adventure. If I were to rate The Witcher on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a solid 10 out of 10. I cannot think of a game that matches the quality, the story, the substance, the theme, and the drama that it sets. The closest game in my mind would be Metal Gear Solid 3.
45, huh? Incredible.
Do you like it?
The feeding ramp is polished to a mere sheen.
The Witcher 3 is one of the greatest games I've ever played. Between the story, the adventure, the mystery, the suspense, all the characters that you meet, and things like the voice acting, which is incredible all throughout the entire game. It's such an incredible game, I can't feel right not giving it a 10. Yes, there are some minor hiccups. Yes, there are some issues, but overall, the entire experience can't be missed. Guys, I will be getting to the DLC, so don't miss out on that. And of course, if you enjoy this video, please leave a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe. And catch me when I go live on Twitch. I really look forward to seeing you guys again sometime soon. See you then. Bye.